In this video, we're going to look at state logic control and how the Dryer Master DM100 uses state logic control to control the discharge rate of the dryer. Okay, so we're going to start with the system in automatic mode. And you can see that we have two columns here. We have the moisture and we have the flow rate. And the idea is that there are some bands. And we're going to call those states. So we have three states here. Either the moisture can be below 14.2, in which case the speed would run at 54. The moisture can be between 14.2 and 15.8, in which case it would run at a speed of 50. Or it can be above 15.8, in which case it would run at a speed of 46. So those are our three possible states. At the moment, we're in the middle state because the moisture coming out is 15.3, and that's in the mid-range of those three states, okay? And so what we want to do here is to see what happens if we go out of that state, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to make the moisture go a little bit lower, and we're going to see what happens. So we're going to put it, if the moisture goes below 14.2, you'll see that it starts telling us it is getting ready to go into another state. And there's a little timer here, and you can set the amount of time that the moisture has to move into another state before it switches to speed. Okay, in this case, I've set the timers really slow or really fast. Otherwise, we would be sitting here watching the video for a long time. Okay, so now what's happened, the moisture is below the 14.2. And so it will now run at a speed of 54 instead of being in the other band. So this is in a new state, okay? And there's a timer you set, which we just saw, that says basically it has to be below 14.2 for X period of time. And if it is, then we switch to the new state, okay? And so the same way, if the moisture now goes back up a little bit, we see it's now gone up to 14.7, so it's above 14.2. We're now going to have our timer, and okay, so now we're back to a speed of 50. Okay, so basically, the system will run in whatever state it's at. And so the question obviously then is, how do we set the states? So we go into the menu button, and we go to where it says Auto Mode Setup. Okay, now, couple of things. On the left here we have the moisture limit. So these are the trigger points that you put in. So you can have a high moisture, a target moisture, and a low moisture. And you can make those bands as tight or as wide as you want, but for each moisture trigger, you want to set a flow rate. Okay, so in our case here, if the moisture goes above 15.8, we want to run at 46. If it goes below 14.2, we want to run at 54. If it's in between, then we want to run at 50. Okay. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can set the rates. This is called Mode A, independent rates. So if I want to change this flow rate and I don't want 46, I want to make this, for example, 47, I can then set each one independently. Okay. If you want to save a keystroke or two, you can go to Mode B or Mode C. Mode B basically says, what's my normal flow rate? So in the middle band, what speed do I want to run at? And then it says, at the upper or the lower, how much faster, how much slower do I want to run? So in this case, we set the high-low rate at 7, which would mean one would be at 57, one would be at 43. So if I change that, for example, and I make that 6, then if we went back to the main screen, we would say that the normal flow rate was 50, the high and low would be 56 and 44. And we'll just take a quick look here. We've got 56 and 44. But so basically what's happening is you're setting one and then you're setting an up and down, okay? Mode C is very similar. You set a normal flow rate and then you say your percentage rate change up or down. So in this case it's 10%, So that would mean 45 and 55s, because 5 is 10% of 50, so plus or minus. So if we go back here, we would see that we're 45 and 55. Okay? So that's basically in the standard mode. Okay? And we've got, most people I think will use mode A. You set your rates exactly where you want them. If you want the quick rate change, you can just use B or C. Okay. Now, what I've been talking about is standard mode. Now, there's a couple of settings we can have and a slightly different way of running it if you choose to. So we hit the control settings button and we have our delay time. So how long something has to be in the next state before we switch over. And you can see I've set them at 20 seconds and 10 seconds. They're very short. Again, for the purposes of the video. Typically you're going to want, a couple of minutes. Otherwise you can have swinging back and forth between different speeds. We're going to switch to the second control mode, which we call enhanced. Okay? And I'm going to show you a little bit how it's a little bit different than standard, and it's up to you basically in how you run your dryer as to how you want to use it. So the first part of it works pretty much the same. So if I turn the moisture down and I go below 14.2, okay, so it's going to stay below 14.2 for the period of time. Once that time is up and our counter counts down how long, then we will go into the lower state. Okay. Now, if you remember what happened last time is if we go back and have a slightly higher moisture again, so if we go back to 14 point something. Okay, 14.4, so it's back, it should be in the middle state now, right? Well, no, in the enhanced mode, going back above that trigger is not enough. It actually has to go above the mid rate. So until it goes above 15, it's still going to run at 54. Now, if we move this above 15, you'll see that right away it switches. So it's really a matter of when you want the changes to happen. In this way, you're going to have longer running times at certain speeds. The other one has the possibility of switching back and forth more frequently. Okay, so we see the time we're back to running at the middle rate. Again, I'll just do one quick showing it the other way. So if we go back, if we go above, let's say we go above. So now we're into that top rate, and it's going to be above there for whatever period of time we set. Here we set 20 seconds. So now we want to run at 47, right? And we can see we're at 47. And again, if I just go back a little bit, if I only go back to just to the mid rate, nothing happens. If we would have been in standard mode, it would already be in the clock counting down to a rate change. Okay, so now we'll go back below 15. We're at 15. And there we're back to it. Okay, so that's basically the two options you have for standard or enhanced as to how the timing works. The key points to remember are where you set your moisture trigger points and what rates you want to run at. And those are things that can change day to day. It can change based on the product you're drying. It can change based on the drying conditions. It can change based on the residence time of your dryer or what kind of inlet moisture you have coming in. Okay, these are all things that you have to consider when you set this. So in state logic control, it's important that the operator has a pretty good idea of how their dryer functions on a normal day. And it works best with dryers that are shorter residence time because it's basically a form of feedback control. And with dryers where there's not a huge amount of inlet variation. Okay. Now, if you have any questions on state logic control or how the DM100 functions, you can always give us a call at the support center, and the number is 1-888-318-8255. 0009. And we're happy to answer any questions you may have on this.